Ladies and gentlemen, it is that time of year once again where I go through and react to my pre-season League 2 table predictions. Now, not to give too many spoilers away, but I have 8 predictions which are double figures in terms of positions that I am incorrect with. I have had an absolute rotter this year, but I guess as always it is just a bit of fun. We'll go through and react to them in today's video. If you do go on to enjoy, please make sure to drop a like on there for me and subscribe to the channel as well if you are new. Can we try and hit 200 likes on today's video? That would massively appreciated. And don't forget to get your thoughts in down in the comment section down below. Was I right or wrong with what I said about your team, and how good or bad were your League 2 table predictions? Mine were, goodness me, yeah, we're definitely going to have a laugh in today's video. Let's get into it. We'll go from the bottom and work our way upwards as always. In 24th position, I predicted Newport County. In the end, they finished in 22nd, so I was only 2 places out with that one, so I'm not too bothered about that prediction. I did think that Newport would go down. They just about did survive in the end in terms of positions, but in terms of points, it was a little bit more comfortable than that. Nelson Yardimac, I thought, on the whole, did a pretty decent job. You know, he's brought in to keep Newport up. They didn't really recruit very well in the summer. They just about got over the line in the end, and they clearly did prove me wrong. So not an awful prediction in terms of places out, but I thought they'd go down, and in the end they have survived. In 23rd position, I predicted Accrington Stanley. Again, they finished 2 places better off in 21st. I just felt like this season, with them losing Tommy Lee, Joe Pritchard, Jack Nolan, them 3 players in the summer, I thought they were going to struggle this year. Wasn't entirely convinced with John Doolan. It wasn't an amazing season for Accrington, but they've got through, they've survived in the end. I do worry about them next season if they don't find somebody else where they can get consistent goals from, like what they had with Sean Wally in this campaign. But on the whole, again, I'm not embarrassed by that prediction. The next couple, though, goodness me, they're bad. In 22nd position, I predicted Bromley FC. In the end, they finished in 11th, so I was 11 places out with that one. I think in the grand scheme of things, not actually an awful prediction from a personal point of view, because I didn't really know much about Bromley coming into this season. I don't think anybody would have predicted Michael Cheek to have the campaign that I had. Yeah, some people might have thought he'd have got 12, maybe 15 goals, but to have the season that he had, obviously he played a massive factor in Bromley finishing in the top half of the table. They were brilliant for the large part for their first ever season in the EFL. It definitely should go down as a successful season for me. So Bromley, yes, I was 11 places out. Yes, it's a bad prediction, but I don't think many people would have had Bromley in the top half, in all honesty. In 21st position, I predicted Grimsby Town. They ended up finishing in 9th, so I was 12 places out with that one. I thought it'd be a very similar season this year to what it would have been in the previous campaign for Grimsby, but they definitely did kick on under David Artell. They were well within a shout of getting the playoffs going into them final couple of matches. In the end, they couldn't quite get over the line, but I was very wrong about Grimsby, so I'm more than happy to hold my hands up about them. I don't think many people would have backed them for a top 7 finish. Obviously, Denver Hume had a great season at left back. Danny Rose scored goals once again. McEachran was very good in the midfield. I think they get their recruitment right this summer, with League 2 looking a bit weaker going into next season. Who knows? Grimsby could maybe be challenging again for that top 7 next year. The predictions don't get much better as we climb up this table. In 20th place, I predicted Salford City. In the end, they finished in 8th, so I was 12 places out with that one. I thought with them losing Elliot Watt to Burton Albion, with Matt Smith retiring, I thought they were done for, really. I didn't really see the quality in their midfield, and obviously Osama Ashley, Tyrese Forner were very good in that midfield. They hadn't signed Akiba Doulakan by that point. Kelly Namai wasn't as proven now as what he was at that time. I felt like the legs had gone in the likes of Garber, Till, Chester, for example, as well. I wasn't entirely convinced with their goalkeeper situation, with one of them being a child and one of them being somebody's granddad, but in the end, they had a pretty solid season. If only they would have beat Carlisle on the final day, they would have obviously made it into that top 7. But I think for me, if they can keep hold of some of them better players, the likes of Ashley, the likes of Namai, maybe a Doulakan might sign a new deal as well, then Salford for me had surely got to be one of the favourites to finish in the top 7 next year. And if you thought the predictions were getting better, again, you'd be very wrong. In 19th place, I predicted Walsall FC. In the end, they finished in 4th, so I was 15 places out with that one. But again, all these predictions are done before a ball is kicked, so there's still multiple weeks left of the transfer window. At the time of doing that video, Walsall's only 3 striking options were Jamil Matt, Josh Gordon and Danny Johnson. They didn't have Nathan Lowe. Would Nathan Lowe have affected my predictions all too much? Probably not, if I'm being completely honest, but I'm going to use that as my excuse that when I did my predictions, they hadn't obviously signed him, and they'd lost Isaac Hutchinson in the summer. They replaced him with Charlie Lakin. You look at Walsall's form without Nathan Lowe, and it was around about 19th since the middle of January. They've only won about 5 games since then. They obviously lost in the League 2 playoff final yesterday to AFC Wimbledon. Yes, in isolation, being 15 places out is a very bad prediction, and I'll hold my hands up for that, but if I would have done the prediction with Nathan Lowe in there, I probably would have been a bit closer. Or at least I might try and kid myself and say I would have been. In 18th position, I predicted Cheltenham Town. In the end, they finished in 15th, so I was only 3 places out with that one. A much better prediction from me. They were very hard to discuss and really rank properly because they obviously had a new manager in Michael Flynn. They pretty much got an entire new squad. They only had about 3 or 4 players at the start of pre-season, and I think they did well just to have that season of stability. They brought through and developed a few good young players like Jordan Thomas, the likes of Ethan Archer. They also had, was it Levi? Not Levi Colwell, was it Ruben Colwell? One of the Colwells who ended up going to Exeter in January and didn't really play all too much there in the first half of the season, and I'm not too disappointed with that prediction. To be just 3 places out, I'll take that one. In 17th place, I predicted Morecambe FC. In the end, they finished in 24th, so I was 7 places out with that prediction. A lot of people backed Morecambe to go down. I kind of went against the grain, and I thought, well, they've got Derek Adams, they're going to have a similar season to the previous campaign, and again, with there being a couple of weeks left of the transfer window, I mentioned at the time they need to get their loan recruits right, because obviously in the previous season they had the likes of Eli King, was it James or Callum Connolly at the back, they had Michael Mellon up top as well, and they just didn't really get the recruitment right. Obviously they've got massive off the field issues. Jason Whittingham, I think it is, definitely needs to sell the football club. They're obviously going down to the National League, and in the end they went down with a bit of a whimper. Far too many 1-0 defeats for them this season, and yeah, it's a real shame what's obviously happening to Morecambe, and I wish them all the best next year in the National League. In 16th place, I predicted Harrogate Town. They ended up finishing in 18th, so I was only 2 places out with that prediction. So I'm quite happy with that one. I thought they'd be in and around the lower part of mid-table. Not really much else to say. Apart from that, you know, they're going to look to hopefully build on for next season. They've obviously lost Josh March already, who signed for fellow League 2 side Crewe, which is a bit of a blow for them, but I'm sure Simon Weaver will have some more tricks up his sleeve, and they'll be hoping for another season of being a bit more comfortable next year in League 2. In 15th place, I predicted AFC Wimbledon. In the end, they finished in 5th, so I was 10 places out with that prediction. I thought there was going to be a lack of goals in their side, and to be fair, I was correct. They didn't really score too many goals, but defensively, they were absolutely brilliant this season. I didn't back Johnny Jackson. I thought he would be sacked this season, and he's proved me wrong. He's got Wimbledon promoted. As always, I'm happy to hold my hands up. He's proved me wrong. Fair play to Johnny Jackson. I thought for the majority of this season, they are quite boring to watch, but they get results, and football is about winning, isn't it? And playing well and being pretty on the eye comes as a bonus, really. Defensively, absolutely outstanding this season. Owen Goodman proved to be the best goalkeeper in the division. I said at the time I liked the signing of Matty Stevens, and he obviously scored a lot of goals, but they did very well this year, did Wimbledon. I was massively wrong on them, so I'm happy to hold my hands up. In 14th place, I predicted Colchester United. In the end, they finished in 10th, so I was only 4 places out with that one. I'm not too disappointed with that prediction, in all honesty. They were a bit hard to predict because they pretty much had an entire new squad. I said at the time when I did these predictions that they didn't really have the striking options that I felt were there to kick them on. At the time, they had the likes of Tom Hopper, Connor Wilkinson. Obviously, come the end of the season, they were in a much stronger position. I think next year, they'll certainly be in a better position to challenge for that top 7. Jack Payne, absolutely outstanding this year. They need to try and keep Lyle Taylor around for another season as well. But 4 places out, it's not the best prediction in the world, but it's definitely the worst in today's video, is it? In 13th place, I predicted Crewe Alexandra, and they finished in 13th place, so I pick up 0 points for that one. That is a prediction that I've got absolutely spot on. There is another singular one other prediction that I got absolutely spot on in this video, but Crewe were obviously second up until around about the time Walsall started falling off, and Crewe's demise in the second half of the season has massively gone under the radar, but they were just as bad, if not worse, than at Walsall. They went from second all the way down to 13th. I was concerned because they lost some of their better players in the summer, the likes of Rio Adebisi, for example, and I didn't really think they went about replacing them. Lee Bell, again, it's another season where he's done very well in the first half of the campaign and then fallen off massively in the second part of it, and they're going to need to put that right going into next season. Into my top half then, in 12th place, I predicted Barrow AFC. In the end, they finished in 16th, so I was only 4 places out on that one. Again, not an awful prediction. I thought they'd be mid-table. They're around about bottom half of that mid-table sort of region, so not a terrible prediction. I think they've done pretty well to have that first full season of stability without Pete Wild at the helm. Did they start the season with Stephen Clements, and obviously he got the sack, Andy Wing eventually took over as well, and he obviously projected them up the table. They ended the season very positively, and I think going into next season they'll be looking for around about another mid-table finish. In 11th place, I predicted Swindon Town. In the end, they finished in 12th, so I was only 1 place out with that prediction. Very happy with it on the whole. Obviously, for the first half of the campaign, they were absolutely awful. Ian Holloway came in, and it took quite a while for them to actually turn it around. I remember when they obviously came to Valley Parade, and I think it was around about the start of December, and at full time he's going in and arguing with fans in the away end, and obviously it doesn't look pretty, but in the end he turned them around. They scored a lot of goals. Defensively they were all over the place, and they're definitely going to need to rectify that going into next season. They've already started out with a couple of their recruits. I like the signing of Darren Aldaker going into next season, but this year I think it was always going to be about a season of stability for Swindon. They've now got a decent core in that squad. They've got the young, is it Ben Amin? I want to say Amin, I think is his last name. He's very good and going to develop into a good player for the future. They've got Big Harry Smith up top as well, and obviously Will Wright scoring goals from defence. But if they can get a proper defender next to him, some proper defensive fullbacks as well, they could be a real force going into next season, because League 2 is looking very, very weak. So only 1 place out on that prediction. Quite happy with that, to be honest. It's been a while though since my last stinker. In 10th place, I predicted Carlisle United. In the end, they finished in 23rd and were relegated down to the National League. I was 13 places out with that prediction. An absolutely awful season for Carlisle, and me putting Carlisle as low as 10th, I got slaughtered in the comments by Carlisle fans for even considering putting them as low as 10th, and they got relegated. They were absolutely awful. I've said it so many times, but that appointment of Mike Williamson will go down as one of the worst in EFL history. They needed the complete opposite as what they brought in with Mike Williamson. They could have appointed anybody, but not a man who is the most boring, least inspiring man in football, who plays the most boring brand of football ever with players who are just not really fit to do it. I looked at Carlisle's striking options and I thought there's a lack of pace, there's a lack of mobility. Obviously Charlie White got his long-term injury. Georgie Kelly spent the majority of the season injured. They kicked on a little bit under Mike Hughes, and obviously he's going to be staying on now for next season as well. But back-to-back relegations for Carlisle. To say they've got comfortably the biggest budget in the division this season as well, and they've finished second bottom. They've spent that money absolutely awfully on 3-4 year contracts to bang average to poor players. Absolutely awful campaign. Terrible management of the squad, terrible management of the football club. And yes, it's all well and good having a fancy ground and you're doing all these nice things. You've got a nice first team coach and all that sort of stuff, but on the pitch you were garbage, and rightfully they were relegated this season. It is an awful prediction, but I don't think I can really take much blame for that, because Carlisle are just bad, very bad. In 9th place, I predicted Gillingham FC. In the end, they finished in 17th, so I was 8 places out with that one. I made this prediction at the time knowing that there was areas of concern in that Gillingham squad, and I mentioned a couple of times that they need to get a striker in who's going to score goals if they want to be challenging for the top 7 this season. They didn't do that in the end. I kind of gambled on them doing so. It didn't come off, and in the end they were absolutely awful. They were poor under Mark Bonner, terrible under John Coleman. They improved massively under Gareth Ainsworth, were certainly a lot harder to beat. Defensively, very resolute as well. A lot of draws, especially a lot of 1-1 draws in there as well. So they're going to need more goals going into next season. Going to need more clean sheets as well. They'll be hoping the likes of Conor Masterson sign a new contract as well. They've finally moved on from Max Amer, I do think has been a big hindrance to Gillingham for a couple of years now. But 8 places out, not a great prediction whatsoever, but not an awful one by my standards in this video, is it? In 8th place, I had Fleetwood Town. In the end, they finished in 14th, so 6 places out on that one. Again, not a particularly great prediction, but I didn't think the standard at the top end of League 2 would be very high, so I thought all these teams would be in and around one another. In the end, I was quite far away with Fleetwood, who started out the season under Charlie Adam, were very inconsistent at times, eventually brought Pete Wild in, and I do think there's a good nucleus in that squad, the likes of Brendan Weirdo. Zach Medley spent the majority of the season injured. I like Elliot Bonds in the midfield, like Phoenix Patterson on the wings, but the likes of Ryan Graydon and Ronan Coughlin had big injuries this year, and they obviously did miss them towards the back end of the campaign. Not an awful prediction, but certainly not a good one whatsoever. Into my top 7 then. In 7th place, I predicted Bradford City. In the end, we finished in 3rd, so I was 4 places out on that one, and goodness me, I am absolutely delighted with how wrong that I was. Now again, these predictions are done before a ball is even kicked, and I wasn't that optimistic coming into this season. I thought we started out the transfer window very well with the signing of Anthony Sarsfield. I thought that was about a 9 out of 10 in terms of ranking for League 2 level, but then we had a lot of 6 or 7 out of 10s, and I felt like we needed a bit more quality in that squad. The first half of the season, we were really poor because Anthony Sarsfield missed 4 months of the campaign with an injury. Alex Patterson missed a couple of months as well, and we just looked disjointed without them in our side. January was massive for us though. We brought in some real top talent, the likes of George Lapsley, the likes of Brandon Kayla, Teo Adaramola. We massively improved on the first half of the season, where we were about 20 points behind Walsall. In the end, we finished above them. Second half of the campaign were outstanding. Our home form this year was absolutely brilliant. Graham Alexander deserves so much credit for getting Bradford City automatically promoted, and the manner that we did it, I could have not asked for a better way to win promotion. Yes, it was heartbreaking pain for 95 minutes against Fleetwood. It looked like we were going to miss out on the final day, but for that goal, that moment, the pitch invasion, the scenes, it was absolutely brilliant. And we are going to be playing in League 1, and again next season there's going to be obviously a lot of League 1 content on the channel. Because of Bradford City's promotion, there'll be very little, if any at all, League 2 content on this channel going into next season. But absolutely, I'm so glad that I was wrong with this prediction. I thought we'd just sneak into the playoffs. In the end, we've automatically promoted back into League 1. Absolutely brilliant. From the highs of speaking about Bradford City's promotion, in 6th place I predicted Tranmere Rovers. They ended up finishing in 20th. I was 14 places out with this prediction, and I've mentioned it a few times on the channel so far, that the big reason why I thought Tranmere would finish in 6th, I mentioned it quite a lot, that there's not really much quality in that Tranmere squad. I said I like the signing of Cameron Norman. I said I like Regan Hendry in that midfield. I was confused by the signing of Josh Davison, but I said I'll back the signing of Josh Davison because Nigel Adkins is going to get the best out of him. Nigel Adkins is one of the best managers in the division, and goodness me, how wrong was I? I actually said losing Rob Apter would benefit Tranmere. They were absolutely garbage under Adkins. He should have been sacked months before he was. Andy Crosby should go down as a bit of a hero for saving Tranmere from relegation back to the National League, because that is definitely where they were heading under Nigel Adkins. In the end, towards the back end of the season, they ended it quite positively. Winning a lot of games was certainly a lot harder to beat. Amari Patrick's goals this season were very important for Tranmere, and they'll obviously be looking to build and kick on for next season. They've signed Nathan Smith as well, recently released by Port Vale. That is exactly the type of signing that they need to be bringing in going into the next campaign. But Tranmere, terrible prediction from me. I thought they'd be in the playoffs. In the end, they're in a massive relegation battle, and if they'd have kept Adkins, would have definitely gone down. Terrible prediction. In 5th place, I predicted Chesterfield FC. In the end, they finished in 7th, so I was 2 places out with that one, and they only just about snuck into 7th, didn't they, on the final day. I thought they'd be a little bit more comfortable. I said at the time, they've got a very good attack, but defensively, it does concern me a little bit, and that was proven right. They were very good going forward, but very sloppy defensively. Paul Cook obviously done an exceptional job there for his first season at Chesterfield with them back in the EFL. I thought they've done very well to make it into the playoffs. Next season, surely got to be one of the favourites for the top 3 for me, and yeah, not an awful prediction, just only 2 places out with that one. In 4th place, I backed Doncaster Rovers. In the end, they ended up finishing in 1st, so I was 3 places out with that one, which again, only 3 places out isn't awful, but I thought they'd make the playoffs. In the end, they won the league title. I said at the time that if Doncaster are to be successful this season, it will for the large part be down to Grant McCann, and they were very consistent throughout the majority of the campaign. I don't think anybody really expected Luke Molineux to kick on from his previous campaign, and he was probably one of 3 of the best players in the division throughout this campaign. I wouldn't say single-handedly, but certainly played a big part in their promotion this year. Rob Street, him joining in January, was pivotal. Owen Bailey was excellent in the midfield and in defence as well. Joe Olowu, Jay McGrath. There's so many players, Jamie Sterry, who do deserve a lot of credit, but Grant McCann has obviously done a very good job there, and they'll be looking to kick on next season in League One. It was very funny to see a lot of the Doncaster players giving it to all the Walsall players on social media yesterday. I think it's very clear to see that Jordan Gibson isn't a fan of Jamie Jellis. In 3rd place, I predicted Notts County. In the end, they finished in 6th, so again, I was 3 places out with that one. I thought they'd be in the automatic promotion spots. In the end, they only just about scraped into the playoffs. They were garbage for the majority of the campaign. For the squad that they've got, finishing in the playoffs, let alone 6th, is a massive underachievement, and I think sacking Stuart Maynard was definitely the correct decision. They've got a brilliant starting 11 on paper, but their squad and strength in depth just isn't really there, and selling Dan Crowley in January and replaced him with Charlie Whittaker, I just still, at this point now, cannot get over that whatsoever for me. I could maybe understand selling Dan Crowley if you go out and replace him with some real quality, but bringing in an unproven Premier League 2 player on a permanent 6-month contract to then release him come the end of that, just an absolutely baffling decision. I think they've done a little bit too much of that recently, where they'll get rid of an 8 or a 9 out of 10 player and replace him with a 6 or a 7 out of 10. You can only do that for so long before the cracks really do start appearing. They've relied far too much on David McGoldrick this season. Jody Jones obviously spent the majority of the season injured, and even when he's come back from injury, does not look the same player whatsoever. Jatta, post-January transfer drama, looks absolutely terrible in the second half of the season as well, and not an awful prediction. I was 3 places out, but in the context of where those 3 places were, it's not a great one. In second place, I predicted Port Vale FC. In the end, they ended up finishing in 2nd. This is the second of my 2 predictions that I got absolutely spot on. I guess they are kind of rivals as well with Crewe a little bit, so quite happy with this prediction. It's always nice to get one that absolutely spot on. I thought they bounced back at the first time of asking. In the end, they did fall a little bit too short to go on and win that league title, but they were brilliant on the whole. That midfield is an absolute joke. Some of the strikers they've got as well, the likes of Lawrence Olai, Jayden Stockley, absolutely outstanding. They're certainly going to need to improve in the centre half and goalkeeping positions for next season, but I think in terms of a starting 11 and even the squad in certain positions like the midfield, there is some real strength in depth there for me, in my opinion. So very happy with this prediction. There's not really much to be excited about in terms of my predictions this year, so the ones that I have got right, I'm certainly going to be very happy about. Now, first place, I think this will go down as my worst ever prediction. This is almost like predicting Man City to be relegated and they go on and win the league title. In first place, I predicted MK Dons. They finished in 19th. I was 18 places out with this prediction. There's some leagues in Europe where it would be physically impossible to be 18 places wrong on a team. I thought they were going to absolutely smash it this season. They finished, I think, 4th in the previous campaign. I thought they were going to kick on under Mike Williamson. They're going to take that playoff heartbreak where they were battered by Crawley and really go again in this season which has just gone by. They recruited absolutely excellently on paper in the summer, but they were awful. They were absolutely garbage. They obviously brought in Scott Lindsay once Mike Williamson was sacked. He just played even more woke ball and it did not work at MK Dons whatsoever. The end of the season with Paul Warne, again a bit more harder to beat, much better defensively, and obviously today they've brought in Nathaniel Mendez-Lang as well, which is an absolute joke of a signing for League 2 level going into next season, but an awful prediction. There was far too many egos in that team and they weren't playing as a squad, they were playing as individuals, defensively all over the place. They were playing Dan Crowley as a number 6, play him as a number 10 and you'll win the league definitely next season. They've got some real talent in that squad, and I think Paul Warne is now the perfect man to get the best out of that going into the next campaign, but an absolutely awful prediction from me there. Now, I forgot to mention it when I was recording this video earlier, but the total points tally, kind of the most important part of the video. Now, it is my worst ever season. I accumulated 156 points. My second worst was the behind closed door season where I got 155. My best was the 21-22 season where I got 114, and in between all them I got 140 in the 22-23 campaign and 144 in the 23-24 campaign. My worst ever League 2 season. Thankfully, it's not the league that I need to focus on now anymore. And there we have it then. There is my reaction to my 2024-25 League 2 table predictions. If you have enjoyed watching today's video, please make sure to drop a like on there for me. If you could try and hit 200 likes, as I mentioned at the start of today's video, that would be massively appreciated. And don't forget as well to subscribe to the channel if you are new. It's free to do so and it really, really does help out. Get your thoughts in as well down in the comment section down below. How good or bad were your predictions and how good or bad were my predictions for your team as well. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day and I'll see you all next season in League 1.